I've been getting a lot of requests to reply to a video by the YouTuber Telltale called Are Vegans Extremists? So that's what I'm going to do today. Let's check it out.
I talked to Cosmic Skeptic on my channel the other day about veganism. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, you probably noticed a back and forth between us. He's vegan, and I'm not. We have a disagreement here, but I believe that any subject should be on the table for discussion without trying to destroy your opponent. And based on the fact that he came on my channel to discuss it, I get the impression he feels the same way. So the video we did together was him saying his piece about veganism, and this video is me putting out my thoughts on the issue. So let's take a look at the question, is veganism versus vegetarianism an extreme position? Let's get into it.
The only thing I'd say so far is that the extremeness of a position doesn't tell you whether that position is correct or incorrect. You could have a correct position that's extreme or not extreme. You could have an incorrect position that's extreme or not extreme. So even if he succeeds in establishing that veganism is extreme, he hasn't established that veganism is false. And I would also add maybe one other point here. Extreme has negative connotations. If veganism qualifies as extreme, we're going to have to use a definition of extreme that's pretty benign.
Before we get into this, I feel like I need to put on record that I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan. However, I agree with the vast majority of what Alex had to say. I agree that factory farming is bad. I agree that we should not just dramatically improve how we treat animals, but change the way we view them completely. People view animals as property. We should recognize that they're living, sentient beings and should be afforded respect and decency. If we approach things from that perspective, then I think the world would look very different from what it looks like now. But we do have disagreements on the subject, so let's look at how our views differ and why I call veganism an extreme position versus vegetarianism. First of all, there's a lot of propaganda spreading around about this subject, like what actually happens at slaughterhouses. My neighbor works at a slaughterhouse. He kills animals all the exact same way. He takes a and fires. Lights out. That's how it happens in the vast majority of slaughterhouses in the US. Now, I can't speak for outside the US. I'm sure there's some weird shit going on in other less developed countries. But my neighbor's workplace has a federal inspector on site 24/7 to make sure everything is above board. They will shut the place down for almost anything. In fact, the place had a leak in their roof recently, and they shut it down for 2 days until it got fixed. This is an area of the law that is actually heavily regulated. There are some pretty detailed and grisly descriptions of the process coming out in the veganism movement, and they're just not true. Or if they are true, then they're fringe cases and they should be stopped. Now, I'm not saying that all vegans spread this kind of propaganda. Obviously, they don't. And I'm not saying that all vegans are only vegan as a result of this type of propaganda. There are plenty of very good reasons to not consume animal products. But it's a problem in the movement that needs to be addressed. If propaganda is being spread from any movement, even the movement I'm a part of, then it should absolutely be called out. It's unacceptable. If you're lying, twisting the truth, or manipulating people in some way in the name of a movement, then you don't deserve to be a part of the movement, whatever it might be. Bottom line.
Okay, so what I got from all of that is that he thinks that some segment of the vegan community is engaged in propaganda geared towards making it appear as if animals endure worse conditions than they in fact do. Now, he hasn't really given us a reason to think that's true. I mean, he gave us an anecdote. Vegans show footage that makes things seem bad, but my neighbor makes sure that his animals are killed nicely, right? Like, that's not really much for us to go off. I wouldn't feel comfortable making any kind of conclusion about like the large-scale agricultural system based on that. But if you want to actually provide some data, right, if you want to show like, here's the rate at which bolt pistol errors on the slaughter line occur, and here's some vegan propaganda misrepresenting that rate, then sure, I'd absolutely grant that. Or if you were to show, here's the rate at which abuse occurs, here's some vegan propaganda misrepresenting that rate, I would accept that too, right? But you haven't done anything like that. All you've given is an anecdote. Now, if I had to state my view on propaganda, I actually would agree with him. I would assume that there is some propaganda, but I would just be assuming that based on the fact that, like, whenever you have enough people in a movement, some of them are bound to engage in that behavior. So I would assume it's there, but I wouldn't assume it's there to any greater degree than it would be in any movement. So yeah, we want some data. Otherwise, I think my position seems a bit more reasonable. There's probably some propaganda. It's probably about the same as other movements. And then additionally, I would just say that even if we were to grant that, everything happens perfectly as planned. There's no bolt pistol errors. There's, animals are abused like extremely, extremely infrequently. Let's just grant all of that, right? I still don't think we're looking at something ethical. Now, my question to someone who thinks otherwise would be, okay, well, if we had a bunch of humans, billions of humans, being bolt pistol holocausted every year, would you think that that's ethical? Presumably not. If you do, I would take that as a reductio. And if you don't, but you do think that's ethical in the animal case, what is it that's true of the animal case that, if true of the human case, would make it ethical? Is it the lower intelligence? Would we say it's ethical to bolt pistol holocaust billions of disabled people? Is it the fact that we're strong enough to do it? Is it ethical to, bolt pistol holocaust all of the people who you're able to bolt pistol holocaust? So that would be my question for him.
So why do I say it's extremist? First of all, how do I define extremism? Whether this is the definition others are working with or not, it's the definition I'm working with. So when I use the term, you guys will know what I mean. When I say extreme thinking, I'm talking about a couple specific things. First, I'm talking about black and white, us versus them, good versus evil thinking, erasing nuance from the conversation. An example of it in the veganism movement is, you absolutely can't use any animal product no matter what, under any circumstances, period. Can't use the eggs of a chicken, even if it's well taken care of. And if you do use the eggs of a chicken who's well taken care of, or if you accidentally eat something that indirectly contributed to the factory farming industry, then you're evil. You're one of them. Who knows how many people or animals were lost as a result of what you did. That's one aspect to the extremist thinking.
Okay, so this is where I start getting a little bit annoyed. So he's, as far as I can tell, just establishing that there are vegans who do stupid things, right? So he said that one of the aspects of extremism, I don't know if this is a necessary or a sufficient condition, or, I guess he's saying it's not necessary and sufficient, but whatever, is black and white, us versus them thinking. Now, I will grant that there's vegans who do that. There's people, as far as I can tell, in most movements who do that. But I don't see how that leads to any kind of negative claim about vegans generally or veganism. So this is where I reflect on the video and go, well, what's he actually trying to do here? Is he trying to establish something about veganism itself? Because if he is, then he's not doing that. Is he trying to establish something about all vegans? Well, because if he is, he's not doing that either. Is he just trying to establish that there are some idiots? Because he's achieved that, but then I would expect him to grant that he hasn't made any kind of case against veganism itself or vegans generally. Now, to get an idea what he might be trying to do, I thought, what's the title of the video? Well, the title of the video is ambiguous, actually. Are vegans extremists? Well, how is that statement quantified? Are we referring to all vegans? Or are we just saying that there exists a vegan who is an extremist, right? Because one of those is going to be impossible to prove, and the other is going to be trivially easy to prove. So, look, this is all I'd say. If all you're trying to establish is there's some vegans who are extreme, then sure. I mean, bravo. I would hope that in return you grant that you haven't made any kind of case against veganism or vegans generally. Never mind, I just watched the video back because I watch it through before uploading, and at the start he actually says he's talking about veganism. So yeah, the points you're making just completely fail because they don't establish anything about veganism itself.
And why I call veganism an extreme position, and why I call veganism an extreme position, and why I call veganism an extreme position. And then there's the point that I added to the bite model, placing extreme or exaggerated importance on an event or idea. Something you'll find the most extreme of the extreme do is they'll boycott an industry to their own detriment. Jehovah's Witnesses exclude themselves from a major societal event, like Christmas, because of some weak, perceived pagan roots. Take that to its logical end. Almost everything we do in society has quote-unquote pagan roots. Using wedding rings, wearing jewelry at all, keeping cats as pets, knocking on wood to ward off bad luck, wearing makeup, naming the days of the week, toasting at weddings. What's next? What else are Jehovah's Witnesses going to give up in the name of principle? And literally nothing else. They already disavow toasting, celebrating birthdays, or celebrating basically anything for that matter. Using piñatas. What else are they prepared to give up? And what good are they actually doing by giving this stuff up? Are they accomplishing anything at all? Is it actually helping anything by not buying Christmas-themed candy around the holidays? No, it's not. It's a symbolic gesture that doesn't help, or really even hurt, basically anybody. The companies are still doing just fine despite losing revenue from Jehovah's Witnesses, which is a group of 8.5 million people. They're only hurting themselves by separating themselves more and more from society. If they really want to do something to remove Christmas from culture, they're doing it the wrong way. And in my eyes, it's the same thing with vegans going out of their way to change their entire lifestyle so dramatically. You can sit there and say it's not that expensive or complicated to change your life to conform to these standards. And that may be true. Hell, maybe it's cheaper, but it's still a dramatic change. And when you change your life that dramatically, judging people for not being like you almost always comes as a package deal.
Okay, so he switched points. At the start there, he was making a point about veganism not having an effect on the problem that it seeks to address. Now he's making a point about veganism causing vegans to become judgmental. I don't know if he's going to come back to the first point, so I'll just hit that now and then let him continue with the judgmental thing. So if you want to say that veganism won't have any effect on the problem that it seeks to address, you're going to need to actually give an argument against the concept of supply and demand. Right now, you're just begging the question against the notion of supply and demand. Anyone who accepts supply and demand is going to go, what the heck? When he assumes that supply will be sustained at the same level if demand drops, he's assuming that supply and demand is false. What's the argument for that, right? So yeah, you're gonna have to actually give an argument against the concept of supply and demand, not just beg the question against the concept of supply and demand. Now let's let him continue with the vegans will become judgmental point.
It's part of the mindset. You're putting in all this work because you believe it's the right thing. It becomes a contest. Who can be more righteous in the eyes of God? Who can be most extreme? Who can go the furthest? The person who separates themselves from this or that industry the most wins. I see Jehovah's Witnesses do it all the time. Now, does that mean I think you're a bad person for being vegan? No. Does it mean I think you're doing more harm than good? No, absolutely not. Do I think you're doing anything productive at all? No, I don't. I think the only thing you're accomplishing by dramatically changing your lifestyle like that is setting yourself down a road of extremism. The further down this path you go, the more dramatically you change your lifestyle for this movement, the more judgmental you become, the deeper you go. It's a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, so that's just speculation. I don't see any evidence for a positive feedback loop of judgmentalness caused by going vegan. And I actually don't even see evidence that vegans are more judgmental than the general population. So yeah, you're going to need to actually give evidence. I'm starting to notice a trend here. Evidence is a good thing. Additionally, even if we grant that, which I see no reason to do, that still wouldn't establish that the position is incorrect.
I grew up watching this stuff happen. I've seen it 1,000 times. Now, that's not to say that boycotting companies or canceling people who do something really messed up can't be a useful tool in the arsenal for change. Canceling and boycotting can be tools for change, but the further down the path you go, the more ready to cancel and boycott you'll be. If boycotting and canceling isn't a well-organized, widespread effort, the only people it hurts is you. I was talking to Mr. Atheist the other day about which is the best solution to a problem. Should we cancel people, or is sunlight the best disinfectant? People often hold up Milo Yiannopoulos as an example of a time when canceling somebody worked. The dude was canceled and he's broke as shit now. Nobody's buying his books, nobody's inviting him to speaking events, nobody will hire him. Dude was straight up canceled, and it worked. But did it? Was he canceled? Is that why he's broke now? No, not really. For better or worse, he continued going to speaking events. He continued saying the stupid shit he says. And the shit only got stupider, until he said something so stupid that even the people on his side couldn't stand behind it. That's what you need for canceling or boycotting to hurt the company instead of hurting you. You need massive public support. You need to change minds. There's something in politics called the Overton window. It's the window of acceptable public discourse. Right now in the US, communism is outside of the Overton window. Nobody takes a discussion about communism seriously. Whether they should or not is irrelevant. You can expect to be laughed off stage if you start endorsing communist ideas, in most cases. But there's a tipping point in society. When an idea is talked about by enough people, it can't be ignored. It needs to be faced head on. There have been times in history when Buddhist monks would self-immolate as a form of protest. And to their credit, it did move the Overton window far enough to draw public attention to the issues. But it's completely unnecessary. and it made them look like nutcases. It damaged the credibility of their movement, even if it did draw more attention to it. Not to mention the fact that there have been times throughout history when that approach didn't work. So how do we win this war of ideas? How do we get people to recognize that animals should have rights? Metaphorical self-immolation through things like extreme forms of boycotts and dramatic lifestyle changes is one way, but it leads people down an extremist hole that they don't have to go down. Talk about it. Raise awareness about the issue. Convince people. Discuss it. You don't have to cancel anybody. You don't have to boycott anything. You don't have to change everything about yourself and the way you live to make change.
Right, so this is actually disgusting. So this guy is a conscious, knowing Holocaust supporter, right? He knows what he's doing. He can't claim ignorance. This is a horrible human being right here that we're dealing with, okay? Now, he is telling us it doesn't matter if you fund the Holocaust or not, just talk about it. Well, yeah, I'm sure that's convenient for you as someone who doesn't want to fucking change, right? Seems like motivated reasoning to me, but it's also just false. I can't prove whether it's motivated. I can't get into your head. It just seems pretty fucking convenient for someone who doesn't want to change to say, oh, well, changing is pointless, okay? So let's just do a little consistency test here, all right? Let's talk about rape, okay? Now, I think that I have a personal obligation, a moral obligation, to not rape, okay? Now, do I think that my obligation is just to, I can rape if I want to, whatever, but, as long as I talk about ending it and, try to disinfect with that good old sunlight that I don't have. No, of course, right? That would be a fucking evil thing to say. Now, that's your attitude with respect to animals, so what I want you to do is tell me, what is it that's true of animals that, if true of humans, would cause you to say, yeah, it's okay to just keep raping as long as you talk about rape being bad? And he's also still going with the it has no effect. This is just bullshit, right? He's just begging the question against supply and demand. Let's see the argument against supply and demand, right?
You doing that isn't hurting anybody but you. There was a saying going around communities that were fighting for communism. The capitalists will sell us the rope with which we will hang them. You have to live and work in this system, but you can use the system against itself. Just be careful not to use it against yourself, because that's where an extremist path takes you. Eventually, as you go down a path of extremism, the next thing to go is your language. You change the way.
Okay, that's it. I can't do any more. This video is complete fucking trash. Telltale, I'd be happy to destroy you in a debate. My links are down below, so if you'd like to get yeeted, you can just contact me via any of those. All I would really say is, the video's just garbage, right? It's just filled with, claims that we don't have any real, persuasive reason to believe, claims about the amount of propaganda in the movement, no evidence for that, right? Just an anecdote. Claims about the effect of veganism on the animal holocaust. Again, just baseless, right? And in fact, begging the question against the concept of supply and demand. And disgusting ideas like that it's okay to participate in atrocities as long as you talk about them. Get fucked. And if you want to get yeeted in a debate, contact me down below. Bye.